For 20 years, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has been Hollywood's most reliable screensaver. You know the one. Big arms, bigger smile, a voice that sounds like it's permanently stuck on motivational speaker mode. Whether he was punching a helicopter in the Fast and Furious franchise or having a heartfelt conversation with a cartoon ocean in Moana, the performance was essentially the same. Eyebrow up, smolder engaged. The acting was optional. His films have grossed over $12 billion worldwide. That's not a typo. 12 billion. Which means audiences have collectively spent more time watching Dwayne Johnson play Dwayne Johnson than some civilizations have existed. He didn't need range. He needed a gym membership and a willingness to say yes to literally anything, with a budget north of $100 million. But then something happened that nobody saw coming. The man who built a career on being a human action figure walked onto the red carpet at the Venice Film Festival looking 30 pounds lighter, covered in prosthetics, and apparently in possession of emotions. The smashing machine happened, and suddenly the conversation around Dwayne Johnson shifted from, why is he in Everything to Wait? Can he actually do this? The Smashing Machine is a biopic directed by Benny Safdie about Mark Kerr, a pioneering MMA fighter who battled opioid addiction and watched his career disintegrate in the early days of professional cage fighting in Japan. It is an A24 production, which, for anyone keeping score at home, meant it was never going to make money, and it did not. It made $21 million against a $50 million budget. The film had Johnson's lowest opening weekend ever, $5.8 million. Commercially, it was a disaster. But here's the thing that nobody expected. The performance was actually good. Not just good for The Rock, good. Actually, genuinely, review the tape, good. Critics who had spent years dismissing Johnson as a walking merchandise opportunity were suddenly writing words like transformative and career-defining. He earned a Golden Globe nomination for Best Actor. The film won the Silver Lion at Venice for Benny Safdie's direction. The Academy nominated it for Best Makeup and Hairstyling because Johnson spent 4 hours a day in prosthetics to physically disappear into Mark Kerr's battered frame. And Johnson himself said something that sounded dangerously close to self-awareness in an interview. He admitted that for years he had been chasing box office numbers, staying in his lane because the lane was comfortable, and everyone around him was getting paid. But his heart was not fulfilled. He wanted to be uncomfortable. He wanted to feel scared walking onto a set again. The last time he felt that exposed in front of a crowd was his first professional wrestling match in Corpus Christi in 1996, when nobody knew who he was and he had nothing to hide behind. That vulnerability is interesting because it's the one thing his entire career was designed to avoid. Every Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson movie, since The Scorpion King in 2002, has operated on the same premise. Put the biggest man in the room into the biggest situation possible, let him punch his way through it, and make sure the audience never once doubts the outcome. It's comfort food cinema. You don't watch a Rock movie for surprises. You watch it because you already know what's going to happen, and that's exactly what you want on a Friday night with a large popcorn. But comfort food eventually gives you diminishing returns. Red One, his Christmas action comedy from late 2024, pulled in $186 million against a $250 million budget. Black Adam was supposed to launch a new DC franchise, but instead it became one of Warner Bros.' most expensive miscalculations. The formula that had generated billions was starting to show cracks, and Johnson apparently noticed before the accountants did. So now we're looking at the most fascinating stretch of Dwayne Johnson's career. Not because any single project is guaranteed to work, but because for the first time, the projects are genuinely different from each other. Live-action Moana is coming in July 2026, and this one is a live-action challenge because Johnson has to do something he's never really done before. He has to perform physically as a character that audiences already love in animated form. Voicing Maui in the 2016 original and the 2024 sequel was arguably his best work until The Smashing Machine, because animation freed him from having to be Dwayne Johnson. He could just be a voice. But now he has to become Maui in the flesh, with director Thomas Kail translating that energy into live action. It is the ultimate test of whether the physicality that defined his career can serve a character, instead of just serving the brand. Then there is Jumanji 3, arriving Christmas 2026, with the full returning cast, including Kevin Hart, Jack Black, and Karen Gillan. This is the safety net. The commercial anchor that keeps the lights on at $7 Productions, while Johnson experiments elsewhere. The first two Jumanji reboots banked nearly $2 billion combined, and nobody is expecting Picasso here. But even within this franchise, there is a question worth asking. Does Johnson bring anything different to Spencer's avatar now that he has proven he can actually disappear into a role? Or does he just do the eyebrow thing again, because that is what the contract requires? Fast Forever is supposedly the final installment in the Fast and Furious franchise, bringing Johnson's Luke Hobbs back for one last ride, alongside Vin Diesel and the rest of the crew. This one is expected sometime in 2027, and honestly, nobody is watching the 11th Fast and Furious movie for acting. They are watching it for cars defying physics and family speeches delivered at inappropriate times. But Johnson's return completes a circle that started with Fast 5 in 2011, the movie that literally revived the franchise and turned it from a street racing series into a global action phenomenon. He was the catalyst. It is fitting he would be there for the funeral. But the project that has everyone paying attention is the untitled Martin Scorsese gangster drama set in the 1960s in Hawaii. Johnson is starring alongside Leonardo DiCaprio and Emily Blunt in a film about the war for control of the Aloha State's criminal underworld. This is Martin Scorsese, the man who directed Goodfellas, Casino, The Departed, Killers of the Flower Moon. Scorsese does not cast people because they can flex on command. He casts people because he sees something in them that they might not even see in themselves. If The Smashing Machine was Johnson asking permission to be taken seriously, the Scorsese project is Hollywood answering yes. This is the equivalent of getting a PhD after spending 20 years working at the same fast food restaurant. Not because the restaurant was bad, it was the most successful restaurant on earth, but because the man behind the counter finally decided he wanted to cook something that did not come with a toy. There is also Lizard Music, another collaboration with Benny Safdie, based on a 1976 children's novel about a boy who discovers lizard musicians on late-night television. Johnson is playing a character called Chicken Man, a peculiar 70-year-old with a 111-year-old chicken friend named Claudia. If that sentence does not convince you that something has fundamentally changed in Dwayne Johnson's career priorities, nothing will. This is the same man who once drove a tank through Beirut while wearing a tactical vest 2 sizes too small. And that's the real story here. It's not that Dwayne Johnson suddenly became a good actor overnight. The Smashing Machine didn't inject talent where none existed. What it did was give him permission to stop performing confidence and start performing truth. For 2 decades, every role was essentially a protection mechanism. Be the biggest, strongest, most likable person in every scene, and nobody can ever accuse you of failing. But the irony is that invulnerability is the enemy of good acting. You can't move an audience if they never believe you're at risk. Mark Kerr was a risk, a quiet, gentle, broken man who fought in cages and lost himself to painkillers. The opposite of everything Johnson's brand represented. And Johnson took the role specifically because it terrified him. He told CBS that he wanted to rip himself open, and to access that vulnerability, he went back to what it felt like being 15 years old and coming home to find his family evicted from their apartment. That's not a press junket soundbite. That's an actor finally connecting his real life to his work. And whether the box office rewards him for it or not is almost beside the point. Because the $12 billion question was, never can Dwayne Johnson open a movie? It was, can Dwayne Johnson disappear into one? The next 2 years will answer that. Live action, Moana, Jumanji 3. Fast Forever, the Scorsese drama, Lizard Music. 5 movies spanning the full spectrum from franchise comfort food to art house experimentation. He's trying to be the action star and the dramatic actor and the Disney icon and the Scorsese protege all at once. It's the most ambitious thing he's ever attempted. And for the first time in his career, failure is actually on the table. Ironically, that is exactly what makes it interesting. Because for 20 years, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson had no range. And now he's discovering that range is not about flexing harder. It's about being willing to look weak. If you're finding this interesting, hit subscribe. I break down actors and their careers every week. The Rock is still discovering his range. And honestly, that might be the best role he's ever played.